welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to do a little mini episode about an article that came out from the Daily Caller. Headline reads, Federal Government's Telework Obsession is Way Worse Than You Thought. This is all about a report from Joni Ernst and her request to get a little bit of a better understanding from the federal bureaucracy of who's working at home, who's not, so on and so forth. So, with that, let's jump into our daily debate. Should you, as a federal employee on taxpayers' money, have to work in an office? And then, more broadly, should you work from an office altogether? Should a job require it? I'm interested because a lot of people coming out of COVID may have different opinions based on whether they saw people not doing their work or maybe they learned that they actually can do it. Throw it down in the comment section. Wow, I'm silly today. Can't actually say anything. I'd love to hear what everybody has to say. So with that said, let's actually go through the first paragraph here. We're only going to do about 5 minutes, so you can go read this entire article for yourself and you can read the entire report. But I did find this one fascinating, no doubt. Quote, the Office of Personnel Management, the OPM, sent Republican Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa a response to an August 2023 request for a report on the effects of telework on the federal government, aka remote work. Quote, showing it increased by more than 500% during the Biden administration, the Daily Caller News Foundation exclusively learned. Now, for those of you who are thinking 500%, well, what's going on there? Let's actually have a little breakdown here. So if the number of people in your office, say there is 100 people, if you had 10 people working and it increased by 500%, that is 5 times 10. And guess what? That's 50 extra people. That means if it increased by 500% in that specific example, you are looking at over half of the population that is not working. Now, of course, the numbers don't always work that way. Maybe it was 1 or 2 people that ended up, that in this particular office out of 100 people were working. If it's 1 person, then that ends up being 6 people. Wow, okay, goodness, increasing by 500%. Or if it's 2 people, it ends up being 12 people. Once again, less than 1/5 of the total population is still out of the office. More than 4/5, a little bit more, is still in office. That doesn't seem that much. So it does really matter about the amount of people that were in said office, because if the number who are already doing remote work, because if the number is lower, then the number is lower, though a 500% increase is still large no matter what. The question is, can you be as effective at your job not meeting in person? Because we're going to dance around it. We're going to say, oh, well, remote works this, remote works that. The one thing that actually matters is the job getting done, which therefore the metric becomes how productive, or at least what we should be looking at is how productive individuals are when they are not in the office. This is something that has been debated back and forth. Companies have been taking on this challenge as more people have wanted remote work. Either they came out into the job economy during remote work, or they've been longtime employees and they realize they can do their job at least partially from remote work. So this has been an ongoing conversation. But as a true believer in in-person work, as someone who has worked remotely, not for the COVID reasons, though that may have been a little bit of part of it for one of the jobs, in the real world here. And then I'm not saying that if you're not working remotely or if it's a part-time internship, I'm not saying that's not the real world. What I'm implying is in the life of a person post-college who has actually had to do remote work, though I did get a lot of my tasks done and I stayed on top of a lot of things, the task load was lighter at that point, and also in general we were just extremely slow and we did not get much done. Group meetings were more of an excuse for people to get together, say hi, and then sit on their phones in order to leave. You went and did your tasks by yourself. So the camaraderie in the office or in the virtual office was definitely not as strong, but also in general a lot of people didn't get their work done. And that's not to be cruel, that's not to be mean to any of them, not to say that people are less productive when they're at home. I'm sure there are situations when done in a reserved way. Every Friday you have a little bit of remote work, so you have some more flexibility to spend some time with the kids or pick them up from school, whatever it may be. I'm not trying to shame anybody's choices. But the fact that we've had a 500% increase under one administration, especially coming out of an era that was very, very friendly to remote work, aka COVID, it should be semi-concerning, and we should actually start to drill down on these numbers a little bit more to understand whether or not they are actually being productive, especially if they're remote working around here or in other major cities, because there's another part of the report, which, like I said, I would go read this article and they have the link to the report. I would go read it yourself. Quote, Ernst's December 5th report detailed issues telework creating involving locality pay, an adjustment on the basic pay of civilian employees in the federal government intended to make sure that federal employees have comparable compensation to private sector counterparts. And this is in order to make sure that we don't lose people to the private sector. We don't lose brilliant minds or at least semi-competent, smart people to the private sector, quote, in a given area of the country, and from the effects that largely vacant office buildings had on the working environment. So even if you think that the virtual work can happen and it can actually be done effectively, the question also becomes, then why do we have these massive office buildings? Besides the fact that we built them and they're legacy buildings, why not start to rent them out? Oh wait, you can't rent them out because they're secure things that goes through the government, right? So then either bring in extra people to fill them, which is kind of a fallacy. Why would you spend the extra money bringing on people just so you can fill a building and make it have purpose, or possibly retool things and sell it and then make it harder to expand in the future? Those are all possibilities. So with that, like I said, go read the article, go read the report if you can. I'd love to hear what you guys' opinions are. With all that, if you want to check out the podcast on Spotify, Podcast, Podvine, all the links will be in the description below the like and subscribe button, just like where the article is. Also down there if you want to find the podcast, more easily, and you want to come back on Tuesdays and Thursdays for international news, you can follow the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links directly to these episodes every single day. Normally they come out at 12 Eastern time. Obviously, if you're listening now and you just saw this when it came out, it is not 12 Eastern time, and sometimes life happens, but I intend to always have that link up there when the video is going live. All right, so with that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.